You see him on the news.
CNN.com contributor, Dean Obeidallah. So, Dean,
watch him at comedy clubs.
When I say Mecca, do you think of a holy place or an urban clothing line?
Read his articles, and you hear him on the radio. The Dean Obeidallah Show is on live right here on SiriusXM Progress, channel 127.
And welcome to the show, brothers and sisters of the resistance. Wednesday, December 19th. I'm Dean Obeidallah. We're live for the next 3 hours. I'm on Twitter at Dean Obeidallah, Facebook.com/Dean of Radio, where you can watch this if you so choose, or when in the third hour, Aisha Moody Mills will be here in studio. You can watch the interview right there. And it's interesting today, and apparently Michael didn't mention it, he just told me. Do you know today was Michelangelo Signorelli's birthday? And Friday is Mark Thompson's birthday. And Monday was my birthday. Isn't this bizarre? That all three of us are born in the same week, a day, alternate days, all Sagittarians for that. What's that worth? I'm not sure. But in any event, it is odd. I mean, what are the odds of that? Really high odds that that would happen. And, you know, Mark joked that maybe we don't have enough diversity. We need people not born in the same week in December hosting shows here. But I think it says something. I don't know. If people know more about horoscopes, maybe you can tell me. I'm not sure. But all right, first of all, did you know Donald Trump hates Christmas? This was reported in the media. I'm not even kidding you. This was reported, and here's Colbert reading the actual media reports, and this is completely true. That was leaked by staffers to the media. Here's clip number one. No clip number one? Clip number one.
Of course, Trump's going to get a break over the holiday season, but he may not enjoy it because apparently the president doesn't like Christmas. One person close to the White House says it's because it's not about him. If we're about him, he'd love it. Christmas is not about him.
That is unbelievable. That's really what the report said, and I thought that was really funny. And then here is Colbert on Donald Trump's tweet yesterday. And by the way, what Colbert is going to read, the first tweet, and does it in a Trump tone, is literally the tweet, if you haven't seen it. Literally Donald Trump's tweet about Michael Flynn right before he was going to court. And it's really stunning from a legal point of view. Let's hear clip number two, please.
Flynn was in federal court today to be sentenced for lying to the FBI. And Trump was on the sidelines cheering him on. Good luck today in court to General Michael Flynn. Will be interesting to see what he has to say, despite tremendous pressure being put upon him about Russian collusion in our great and obviously highly successful political campaign. There was no collusion. That is, pretty sure that's just witness tampering in real time. Good luck to Michael Flynn on keeping his trap shut. Your son and I will be watching your testimony, and then we're going to go feed my alligators. They normally eat rats and rat children.
So, and that actually makes a great point that he made, Stephen Colbert. That tweet arguably could be witness tampering. And next hour, Richard Painter, if you watch MSNBC, the ethics czar, is going to join us at the top of the hour, and we're going to talk about it with him. In fact, we have three great guests tonight. We have Richard Painter, then Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman from New Jersey, in the third hour, Aisha Moody Mills. We're not mailing it in, even though it's the holidays, my friend. We're going from now to Friday, all new shows all the time. But here's something. Last night, the Senate passed a criminal justice reform bill that I really want to talk about, and I think it's important. But here's the thing. I must be honest with you. Because Van Jones, who I have the greatest respect for, I've had him on this show once, my old show a few times. We're not friends, but we're friendly. The most respect for him. But he said today, you have to give Donald Trump credit for this criminal justice reform bill passing. And with all due respect to Van Jones, I have to say, I refuse to give Donald Trump credit for this bill passing. I do give immense credit to all the organizations and groups involved. And it was a bipartisan effort. The Koch brothers were involved. So was the ACLU. So was the Urban League. It was a remarkable coalition of people. Donald Trump happened to be there. Giving him credit for this passing is like giving David Duke credit for white sheets. It's not relevant. And if you disagree, and I want to go through the bill first from a policy point of view, and then we can touch on the politics of it. So if you didn't see what happened, the vote was last night 87-12 in the Senate. and they passed, it's called the First Step Act. It's expected to pass in the House, and Trump has promised to sign it into law. The bill will take, and this is accurate reporting, will take modest steps to alter the federal criminal justice system, but positive steps. It's modest, but very positive. It only affects a fraction of the prison population in our country. We have 2.1 million Americans in prison right here in our nation. This law only affects those in federal prison. That's 180,000 people. So on a percentage basis, it's actually kind of small, but for those people, it actually will be helpful. Here are the major provisions of this bill. And again, bipartisan effort, organization on the full spectrum of the political world, from conservative to liberal, joined together for this. First of all, it makes retroactive the reforms enacted by the Fair Sentencing Act of 2010, which was signed into law by President Obama. That reduced the disparity between crack cocaine and powder cocaine sentences at the federal level, which definitely, there was a racial component in the way people were prosecuted for cocaine, tend to be like white people with money versus African Americans or people of color with crack, and that got rid of it. So now it tweaks the 2010 law, and it'll help about 3,000 inmates. Secondly, and this helps all the inmates, it'll take several steps. I mean, for the future, this helps people convicted in the future. Eases mandatory minimum sentences under federal law. Gives judges a little bit more discretion, and that's very helpful. It also, and this affects every inmate, and ironically enough, it helps Michael Cohen, I'm not kidding you at all, it increases good time credits that inmates can earn in only federal prison. Again, this is only federal prison, not state prison. Every state's different. And right now, you can only get 47 credit days a year and reduce your sentence. It'll be 54 days. So a year instead. And it's getting closer to, like, if you're sentenced to 3 years and your good behavior, you'll only serve closer to 2. And the third thing is it allows inmates to get earned time credit by participating in more vocational and rehabilitative programs. And that's really excellent. That is objectively really, really good. And part of it makes me feel like Trump is supporting this because he knows him and his family are going to jail. And maybe he'll get out sooner. That's part of me. Part of me thinks that. But here's the reason I don't give Donald Trump credit for this. And I really want to hear if people think I'm being too partisan, if it's unfair, if we can give Trump credit on this while opposing him on everything else, and that's fine. And that's what Van Jones did. He goes, he's wrong on 99 things, but I give him credit for this one. President Obama could have signed this law. In fact, President Obama proposed a much more sweeping criminal justice reform bill. What happened? Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan would not let it come to a vote. Mitch McConnell is the worst. He's unreal how bad Mitch McConnell is in the Senate. In fact, when the Democrats had control of Congress in 2010, Obama did pass and sign the Fair Sentencing Act, which reduced the disparities I mentioned earlier between crack and powder cocaine penalties. But when he wanted to do more, McConnell said no. The New York Times reported today, this legislation will be signed by Trump, falls way short of what Obama had proposed, and it could never get past Congress. Now, Obama wrote an article for Harvard Law Review just last year after being out of the president and talking about how important criminal justice reform was to him. And it was a very important issue. And he wrote here, throughout my time in office, using an array of tools and avenues, I push for reforms that make the criminal justice system smarter, fairer, and more effective at keeping our communities safe. And he said, I've tried to bring that case directly to the American people in a number of unprecedented ways. Talking about sitting with police officers. He was the first president to ever go visit a federal prison and speak to prisoners there. And it goes on from there. But there's a frustration in the article that despite his best intentions, best efforts, thinking out of the box, appealing to the American people, the GOP-controlled Congress would never give his criminal justice reform bill the light of day. They would not. That's the world that we lived in. That is the reality. But on his own, President Obama used his powers as president to do what he could to effectuate criminal justice reform, because this was an issue he'd been championing for years. And during his presidency, the incarceration fell by 5% after climbing for decades. So right off the bat, objectively, you have that standard and say, wow, it actually was lessened. How was it lessened? Through his work. In one way, he issued clemency to over 1,000 inmates, meaning they got to get out before their whole term was fulfilled. His 1,000 clemency grants put it in perspective, folks, it was more than the last 3 presidents combined. So there was President Obama, because Congress would not act, because Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan would not bring his bill up to a vote, did what he could and released 1,000 people who were nonviolent offenders early from their prison because he felt their sentence was unfair based on the law. And that was 3 times. I mean, that was more than all last 3 presidents combined in giving clemency. He also argued against laws that had mandated lengthy sentences. In fact, even Eric Holder, his DOJ, his attorney general, did what they could to ask prosecutors to stop measuring success by the number of defendants set away and encourage states where they had legalized marijuana, he encouraged federal prosecutors not to prosecute people in those states where they were legalizing marijuana use. So President Obama's record on criminal justice reform, if they could have had a vote on his bill, it would have clearly passed, because look at the numbers the way it passed yesterday, 87-12. There is overwhelming support for criminal justice reform, but they would not allow it. The Republicans would not bring it up. And here's the reality. Once Jeff Sessions got into office, he reversed the efforts by President Obama to effectuate criminal justice reform. So actually, you have this bill now that's going to do some good things, but already Trump and Jeff Sessions reversed certain advances by the Obama administration. I'll give you specific examples here. Before, Eric Holder had urged easing up on nonviolent drug offender prosecutions and mandatory sentences for them. Gets in there, Jeff Sessions, nope, changed it all. He orders prosecutors to charge people aggressively as possible at every case. Also, Sessions rescinded the Obama-era policy to discourage federal marijuana prosecutions in states where its sales and use were legal. Also, it goes on. Trump got rid of the clemency initiative that Obama started. Sessions also rescinded the Obama-era memo that directed the Department of Justice to reduce the use of private prisons. And once Sessions and Trump got in there, they reneged on certain consent decrees they had with different law enforcement departments that were addressing discrimination. So this bill might become law, and that's going to be great. But let's not forget this. Donald Trump, when he had his opportunities, did everything he could with Jeff Sessions, and they're still in place, to roll back criminal justice reform, to make life more difficult for people in the criminal justice system, and to have more prosecutions. So no, I don't give Donald Trump credit for this. Now, Jared Kushner, for the last year and a half, has worked behind the scenes to make this happen. Donald Trump just showed up at the end there. You know, Kanye West showed up and Kim Kardashian, and he thought about it. But again, when you look objectively at the numbers and the way this passed, in huge numbers in the Senate and in the House, it could have passed easily the same thing under Obama. And it did not, simply because the Republicans, Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan, did not let it happen. So who do you give credit for allowing a vote? Was it Trump? I just don't see it. I honestly do not think he cares about this issue. This is a guy who talks about the American carnage, who talks about law and order, who's rolled back every Obama-era regulation and initiative to have criminal justice reform, and now doing this one thing and is taking a victory lap like it's all him. It is the activists who work tirelessly. They deserve every bit of credit. And that's at least my view. And I'd love to hear what you think. Do you give Trump credit? Is it fair to give him credit? Does it matter on some level? You know, Trump will be talking about this for the next 2 years. Look what I did. And you know, at the bottom line, again, I'm saying objectively, it's a good thing. I just do not believe he deserves the credit. I believe it's all the groups, left and right, conservative groups and liberal groups that teamed up together. They deserve all the credit, not Donald Trump, because this very bill could have easily passed under President Obama. And there's only one reason it didn't. Mitch McConnell. It's really McConnell more than Ryan. So let's take a break and come back and take your calls. 866-997-4748. 866-997-4748. Be right back. Progressive values are the best of American values, and we need to keep fighting for them to save our country.
Don't go anywhere. This is the Dean Obeidallah Show on Sirius XM Progress 127.